when I heard people talk about burnout before, I didn't know what they meant. I was just like, okay, yeah, you're kind of stressed out, or maybe you should, take some time off. But when I got to that phase of burnout, it was I couldn't stop. Meaning that it's like, man, if I take my foot off the gas on this thing, it is not going to work, right? Then sometimes I'd get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and that went on for like 8 to 10 months. So ultimately, the board asked me to step down. So the topic we wanted to tackle today was living a non-anxious life.
Yeah.
And for me, it was an interesting thought because I spent some time Friday night with some friends. We went on a double date, me and my wife, and then Saturday night we're hanging out with some other friends, and it was kind of this theme of anxious and anxiety and worrying about stuff and how some people they just like go right. They just kind of like get in their minds. They kind of get stuck in this loop, and they just go 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 go, and all the things just kind of weigh you down. And have you ever watched a movie called Bridge of Spies? It's got Tom Hanks and some other people in it. It's an interesting
Sounds
movie.
familiar.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's about this Cold War, and right when the Berlin Wall was getting built, right?
Mhm.
So the Soviet Union's shutting down Germany basically, and so there's three different parties involved. It's a great movie in terms of like negotiation and like it was really good. But the main guy in the movie is Tom Hanks, but the subplot is or the sub character. Obviously, I'm not in film, so I don't know, I don't know what the actual
Yep.
thing is. Whatever. One of the other characters, he's the spy. He's a spy for the Soviet Union. He gets caught in the United States. He gets right, and he's going through this process. And so, I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but the guy's just like the spy is just like really cool, calm, collected, and Tom Hanks, the character, I think he's an attorney, and he's just like, well, you could get killed for this, like penalty is death. Like aren't you worried? And his line every time is he just kind of looks at me, he's like, huh, would it help? Like, would it help? You know?
Yeah.
And it was just kind of funny because anyway, as we're talking with our friends, I kept thinking about that, like, you worry about this, you worry about this, you worry about this. And just that phrase, like, huh? Well, would it help? So I don't know. Enough about that. That was just kind of
No, that's a good reminder though. Like, it sounds like during the course of your evening out with your wife, uh, it was hard for you to stay present in some of the moments because. Am I wrong in saying that? It sounds like you had.
no, no, it was not. I don't think it was that so much. It was more of a like I wasn't worried about stuff, but it was kind of our conversation,
Yeah.
especially with my friend and Anna and his wife, and they were talking about and is it motherhood and we just have like all this stuff that we were thinking about all the time and like our brain just doesn't shut off, or is it that there's so many possibilities and so we don't know what the right decision is because we kind of get into decision overload, if you will,
Uh,
because we go this way, this way, this way, like what is the right thing versus just and then it just turns into this anxiety thing. So that was kind of what we were discussing. And so anyway, the thought just kept coming to me is like, well, yeah, but how do you do that? Like how I guess for my journey is there was a time, and we were talking about this before we started recording, but there was a time when I was the CEO of DaxBot that I don't, realistically, I probably slept 2 to 3 hours a night, and it
mm,
wasn't good sleep for, I think it was 8 to 10 months, something like that. It was just brutal. And the reason is there was so much going on. There was so much uncertainty. I mean, there's a lot that goes on when you're the CEO of a company. When you're the CEO of a company that is burning cash like crazy and has zero revenue, it's even more stressful. And then you don't really know what the next moves need to be in terms of market fit, market placement, things like that. It's not that the technology was necessarily bad, so we didn't have uh, a really good place for it. And manufacturing, there's so many things that were going on, right? That's just part of running a company. But when I was in that, and we had, I talked before, when I heard people talk about burnout before, I didn't know what they meant. I was just like, okay, yeah, you're kind of stressed out, or maybe you should, take some time off. But when I got to that phase of burnout, it was two things. Like one, I couldn't stop, meaning that it's like, man, if I take my foot off the gas on this thing, it is not going to work, right? That's part of being the CEO of a company. Like, it's up to you. Like, you're the guy. And so having this thought like, man, I let up, I can't let up, I can't let up. And then all the things like worrying. And it was not necessarily like I'd wake up and I'd feel like, oh, I'm feeling worried. It was just that my brain would not shut off.
Right.
And so I'd listen to podcasts basically like all night because my brain wouldn't shut off. And sometimes I'd get 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And that went on for like 8 to 10 months, something like that. And when all of that finally unfolded for me, or finally came to a culmination and ended, ultimately, and I don't talk about this often, but ultimately, the board asked me to step down from being the CEO because I wasn't being effective, right? And it's funny because a lot of times when people think when you're in an organization and you're kind of the little man on the totem pole, you're like, oh, I'm going to get fired. It's like, no, the people that are getting fired the most are the CEOs because they're responsible for everything. It's the reason that the head coach on a football team is the one that gets fired, right? It's the team that won. So anyway, so the board asked me to step down, and when that happened, it was a blow to the ego for sure. But then it was really good because then I had to do a lot of reflection, right? I mean, that was a obviously not one of my lowest points, but it was a low point where I was like, okay, am I good at anything? Where went wrong? But it took honestly, it took about a month to detox. I basically took a month off in December, and just started reflecting, like, what did I learn? What are the things? And it was really clear to me that I let that get away from me in terms of like I can't change what's happening in the marketplace. I've got the things in my control, but the anxiety that was keeping me up all night, the stress, the worry, things like that, is not something that I'm willing to do again.
Mm.
So if that means that I need to be in a lesser position, that's fine. If that means I need to uh, not live as extravagant of a lifestyle, then that's what that means, right? Like all these things, because I'm not willing to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And it was
Yeah.
kind of an interesting, like really like big for me, like reflection into boundaries and things. But I don't know where I was going with that. That was just kind of my when I think anxiety and a non-anxious life, I think that was kind of my turning point. Because I definitely got burnout. Like it was bad. So
Well, I just want to like, just kind of dig in a little bit when you said that you weren't willing to do this, right?
Mhm.
Like, tell me more about that right there. Like,
Okay.
you weren't willing, like, because 8 months before that you were, right? So,
Yeah.
so like, what, like, how did you come to that point where, nah, it's not like I don't know
Yeah.
if, whether it's a value thing, a worth thing. Like, was it, you know what I mean? Like, was it worth it? I don't know if those are some of the things that you reflected or yeah. Just
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
Sure. So yeah, you know me. I like to reflect. I like to
Yeah, I know.
journal. I
Yeah,
like to think.
yeah.
Um, in that time when I took that month off, I there was one day I went to a coffee shop, which I love to do. It's one of my favorite places to work. And I sat down with the journal and just like, and it was probably like 2 or 3 weeks in the process. Like the first 2 weeks, I did nothing. I basically like felt like I was a vegetable. I felt defeated, right? I was, I was pretty down.
It's a blow to
When I sat
it's a blow to the ego though, right?
down, yeah,
Like, oh, I
completely.
feel you. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, it was probably the most gracious thing that could happen to me because I don't know if I would have been able to pull myself out of that spiral. So again, hindsight's always 2020, and the hindsight now is like, man, the board did a very gracious thing to me. I think they could see I was burning out and I wasn't being effective, and the company wasn't doing well. When I sat down to journal and I started looking at, okay, what are the things that I did? What are the things that I did not do well? Like, what are the things that happened? As I looked back over the last year or 2 years that I was the CEO there, I wrote down a couple key findings or a couple key takeaways. The first one was that it's not that important. That was the thing I wrote down. And by that, I meant of all the decisions that I had to make, probably thousands, right? Conservatively in that time, of the thousands of decisions that I made, I could only remember like a handful of them. So I was like, okay, so those one or two or three decisions, those were the important decisions
Mm,
that I should have been making. I shouldn't have been making the thousands of decisions.
mm,
And so when I say it's not important, it's not that it's not that it's not important. It's that it is not important enough for me to kill myself over.
sure.
Right. So I think that was a big one. The second one was that the second a big learning was I need to create something for me, and that's part of leaning into Lead Academy and doing what I do now.
Mm.
is I realized I have to do something for me that I can control. That's within my grasp uh, and control and things like that. And I think the third one was I need to do something that actually fits me better. It's not that I don't like technology. It's not that I am not interested in those types of things, but it was, kind of the end of the day, when I think of, and obviously, being a Christian, and I think in terms of like eternity, does this actually matter?
Yeah.
Going back, no, right? It's a cool company. It's a cool way to make a living. It's cool to employ people. It's cool to build companies. But in terms of like the bigger picture of things, is it actually that important, right? Is it actually the most important thing? And not really.
Mm.
And I think it was highlighted for me when I was hanging out with um, Thursday nights. There's my cousins and some other friends, and they do this thing called Guys Night. Haven't been in a long time. One of the times we were together and we were talking about like what is the thing that is really important to you. It's kind of fun. I mean, there's a lot of smart business people and whatever that go to this, and a lot of them smoke cigars, which I don't. And so by the time I get home, I smell terrible, but it's fun, good time. And in that, one of the conversations was basically around that. Like their thing was, man, I want to build like some of the coolest, most innovative new technology. And their whole life has really been centered around that, which is awesome. Like we need those people. Like we need the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, right? We need those people because they're constantly innovating and pushing the boundaries of what technology can do. And so to even just be around those types of people, I'm blessed, right? It's
Yeah.
very, very cool. But as they're talking, and I realized I was kind of the odd man out in the room because not that these, most of the people in the room are Christians. So it wasn't that, but it was, at the end of the day, like I really care about people. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing that I really value and care about. So even the work that I do in business now, when I'm going in and I'm helping teams, it's that I'm helping the people, right? I'm helping the team work.
Right.
When I see that the CEO is in burnout or doesn't know what the next move is, it's like, well, no, I'm helping the CEO, right? I'm helping them have a different perspective and a different lens to view the work through because we are not our work, right?
Yeah.
And so
Right.
if you can separate those two things out, it gives you a little more humility that comes to that. But it's also realizing, going back to like, what are the things that are most important? I think one of my favorite examples, and I think it was John Maxwell when we were at, a leadership conference, I think probably together. And
Mhm.
he talks about this analogy of life is about juggling, right? And there's a lot of balls, but there's one glass ball, right? Work is a rubber ball. Your coaching kids is a rubber ball, right? And all these things that we realize that as you're juggling these balls and you drop a rubber ball, well, it'll bounce back. It might get a little scuffed, right? Might get a little nick. But your family and your health, like the things that are actually important, is a glass ball. And if you drop that ball, well, there's bigger consequences, right? Big nicks can get taken out. It can be completely shattered. It can be broken in half, right? And so many times, entrepreneurs specifically, especially with our hard chargers, they are so focused on the company, on the things like that. And again, not that it's a bad thing, but if you're doing that at the expense of the things, in my opinion, that are more important, family, relationships, marriage,
Mhm.
then ultimately those things that you're not willing to drop actually become the things that crush you and
Mhm.
kill you, break apart
Mhm.
the relationships. And so when I say that was a long explanation to unpack what you asked,
Oh, I love
when
it,
I
man.
say I'm not willing to do that, I realized these are things that I'm not willing to do anymore.
Yeah.
I'm okay taking a pay cut if that means that my family's going to be healthier. I'm okay not being on a magazine cover for being an innovative technology guru, right? I'm okay with. There's a lot of things that I realized these are the things that are actually important to me. And going back to like the things we were talking about, like the kind of the bigger overarching principles of life and
Right.
and the things that I actually value. Because I say that I value family. And if I actually value family, what are the things that I'm doing that is showing that I actually live out that value?
Mhm.
Uh, so that was a long way to unpack it, but
Yeah.
there was something good in there.
There was a lot of things good in there, man. Just like you've been able to self-reflect and to also just share. You can comb out what you value in there, right? And why. And then you said that you needed to do something for you that you're
Yeah.
good, like that you are strong in, and I would totally agree. uh, um that you have a lot of strength in helping people, right? And that's why you start something like Lead Academy, because you're still in that like familiar arena where
Mhm.
it's business or something going on, but you're not focused on the thing. You're focused on the people, which is like that's your strong suit, man. Like I mean, there's a reason that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I'm like a big fan of yours, and like just I really gravitate like the way you um the way that you and I connect, because I
Yeah.
know that, you know what I mean. I know that's your strong suit, right? And like you'll figure out technically, but it's not about the technical part. It's about how it's about the people part
Yeah.
that you focus on, and it ends up being right when you focus on the right things. It ends up being good anyways, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think yeah, no man, I think it's I'm so glad that you were able to reflect those things and really um start to live those out, right? Like what you're willing to do, and like you said, right? Like old Tom Hanks, like it's really important, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like so um yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing all that, man. That's good stuff.
Yeah. You bet.
Um you also wanted to each, I think, just bridging from that, right? Living a non-anxious life. That's really kind of where the conversation um really started, right? Because there's a lot of anxiousness in those 8 months that you were
Yeah.
grinding, and yeah, right,
For
it was
sure.
all on you. um I remember when we were starting to talk about, I was going to ask you, that's what I was going to ask you too, like the podcast is called The Choice, right? Um because of the statement that you said, or it was actually like you're asking again from a good reflective like um session with yourself, where you're asking yourself you know like uh like who's in charge here? Well, I am. And like you're ridiculously in charge of yourself. Like that's a
Yeah.
choice. Like we have to that's a choice to think that way. um and when you're in the grind like that, your it's almost like your thoughts can be very biased to well, I don't got no choice. Like this is
Yeah.
it's
That's good.
right. You know what I mean? Like I have no choice. I have no say in this because it's all on me, um and things could fall apart if I don't do this and that, right? And I think those things can spill into just even like our when we're off track like that, right? I think it can also spill into, you talked about it, right? Our family life, our relational life, right? Where um uh, like the grind can make us really biased when it comes to our choices, and
Yeah.
almost like kind of have this clouded thought that oh man, maybe I don't have a choice, but we really do,
Yeah.
right? It's all a choice, right?
Yeah.
So um when I thought about that, I was actually when I thought about living the non-anxious life. It's actually a title of a book that I was reading at the time,
Oh, nice.
by John Deloney.
Yeah.
Dr. John Deloney. He also has a podcast with it's like he's part of like the Dave Ramsey um like
He's part of the
lineup.
Ramsey companies. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Ramsey Solution. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of one of his personalities that take care of the therapeutic wing,
Nice.
psychology type things. But he he presented living a non-anxious life as um also making choices, right?
Mhm.
Like there's six choices you can make: choosing reality, choosing connection, choosing freedom, choosing health and healing, choosing mindfulness, and choosing belief, right?
Ooh.
all
Nice.
those all those six things, um all those six principles uh, were essential to living a non-anxious life. But here's the common denominator: the choosing part, right? Like we still have to choose. There's principles out there, but we still have to choose at the end of the day, right? We still have to choose to live in reality and be like, okay, uh, like the things that I'm doing is not working, right?
Yeah.
And having like choosing to self-reflect or maybe like dial in, like recalibrate what you need to do, and it all starts by okay, here's the actual situation, and I think we got to do that a lot, or um or we can get lost in the sauce if we don't choose that reality. I guess
Yeah.
if we want to start out like just I mean maybe we could just hit up on some of those. Like what do you think about when um that's one of the point he talks about in the book is choosing reality.
Oh
what do
man.
you take from that?
Yeah, man. When you when you said that, I think there was a couple things that came to mind. One was the like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like when I journaled in my own journey, right? When I journaled, like it's not that important. That was me having that dose of reality. Like it's not that important. Guess what? The company today is doing infinitely better without me.
Mm,
Like I'm still around, right? And I
yeah,
still, I'm still have touch points. I still know what's going on in the company, things like that. I care, right?
right.
But I'm not the guy at the helm, and that was the right decision, right? And again, based on reality. The other thing that, and I
Mm,
think it was probably a John Maxwellism. Not, I'll just take it as my own. But it was one of the jobs of a leader is to define reality,
right.
right? And I tell people that all the time. Like one of the jobs of leadership is defining reality. Like, no, no, we're actually here,
Hmm.
or you are actually here.
Right.
Um, and if we don't have reflection, I guess even people in our life to like reflect back to us, like where we're actually at,
Hmm.
I think there's two things that can happen. One is I think that we think that we're better than we are, right? Which
Hmm.
is easy to like have that pride thing, which I think for me was definitely it. Like you're saying, like, no, I have to do this, otherwise it's gonna fall apart. Like that wasn't reality, right? Because I thought I was better than I was, right? The other side of it is that we don't think that we're as good as we are,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And instead of being like, no, kind of having some flex and being like, no, I do have skills. Like I do have confidence. And it's funny because in that anxiety, if you will, for me, both things were happening simultaneously
yeah,
because,
right.
right? It was like,
Right.
no, I can't let go of this because it's going to fall apart. And at the same time, it's like, what the hell? Am I good at anything? Like, and I actually would say that out loud. And when I said that out loud, uh, to like my wife and like my cousins, like people that know me well, and they've worked with me and they know the skills I have, and they all laughed and they're like, "What do you mean you're not good at anything?" It's like no, no, like again going back to like defining reality. And so I think if there are people that don't think that they're good at something, I would say, I mean, here's one thing I did in Chat GPT, which was so fun, is if you just go to Chat GPT or Gemini or something like that, and you just bullet point out some things that you've done, right, just accomplishments, and then just say write me a biography or like write me a bio, as a speaker. Like it kicks out this thing like you walk on water, man. Like this Chat GPT wants to like please and all these other things. So it's like wow, I am a badass. Like that's
There
really
you
what
go.
comes out of
Yeah.
it. It's really funny. Um, and at the same time, like also having the hubris and the humility to realize you're not great. And the thing that reminded me of that is, um, so I'm a big history buff. So President Truman, right? He was the vice president under FDR during the war.
Mhm.
FDR has, complications of polio and whatever was going on at the time, and right, he's in a wheelchair forever. He ends up dying before the war is over, right? Before World War II is over. And so the presidency then falls on this backcountry dude named Harry Truman, who was not the guy that you would think should be the president, right?
Mm,
And then a lot of things happen, right? And Harry Truman has to make the decision to drop the bomb on Japan, right? I mean, there's a lot of critical things that were
right.
then like just bestowed on this guy. So throughout his career, though, in politics, Harry Truman's career in politics, he had a couple key people that were friends that knew him from the backwoods of, I think Missouri is where he grew up, or some other state down there. Anyway, uh, and I can't remember his friend's name, but it was really pivotal. So I'm reading this biography on Truman, and he gets to the point that he becomes president, and his friend comes up to him and says, "Harry," he said, "now that you're the president, there's a lot of people that are going to come to you and tell you how great of a man you are, how all your decisions are golden, how you are just like this amazing specimen. He said, but Harry, you and I both know that you ain't. And just that, like, you need
Reality.
people in your life to be like, I got to ground you in reality. And honestly, man, like your friendship is one of those for real, like where I just get to hang out with Ray. I'm like, oh yeah, I can just let the guard down a little bit. You know what I mean? And just whatever accolades or things that people say you're great. It's like, nah. At the end of the day, Ray's seen me at some really low points, and he loves me just the same, right? And maybe even more, honestly,
Yeah, bro.
because serious vulnerability and things as you go through life. And I think we all need that, right? I think we all need those people that are you can really just let walls down. So I don't know, there, I riffed on a lot. You keep asking these
Oh, well,
questions, and I'm just riff all day, but that was a good one. So there's
yeah.
my thoughts on reality.
Hey man, I talked way more last time than you did, so it's your turn, bro. And
Fair
and
enough.
and, and here's the thing too. Like I read the book, right? I read the Non-Anxious Life book, right?
Yeah.
And I've also reflected and like, oh yeah, I yeah, that's a good point, right? Like,
Yeah.
so now like basically I want to get your thoughts, and maybe more of a like non uh nothing's influencing your thoughts because have you read the you haven't read the book, have you?
I've never
Okay,
heard
so
of it until
like
you did it.
yeah,
Yeah.
for me it's interesting because like it just you saying just you sharing your choosing reality, it just like confirms to me that how much you and I value the same things. And that's
Mhm.
why we're good friends. That's why we can like say things like that's why you can say things like that. And like
Yes.
and we both can let our guard down and and have some vulnerability. So the next choosing, right? The next choosing when it comes to uh living a non-anxious life is choosing connection.
Mm.
Mm, mm. And
Yeah.
like don't let me down on this because I'm pretty sure I just told you that you're pretty good at you value relationships a lot and you have a relational bend when it comes to um you know with your work with Lead Academy and a lot of the businesses. That's right. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And
um,
I kind of already like transitioned to that a little bit where I was just like, that's, why our relationship is important and the whole Harry Truman story.
yeah.
Because I think right, the connection piece. So I do this thing when I, like one of the last times I spoke, um, it was the Ben's Chamber of Commerce and talk about Dunbar's number. You familiar with that at
Hmm.
all? So it was, I don't know if he's a social psychologist or what, but basically the idea is what is the number of connections and relationships that a person can have and actually manage
Yeah.
well, right? And so it starts at, the small inner circle and then it gets, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, your tribe, family. And then ultimately it ends up being like, there's about 1,500 people that you kind of know, meaning like you can pass them on the street, you kind of know who they are and things like that. Like this just happened at church yesterday. There's this lady that I saw. I'm like, man, why do I know her? And then my son was coming out of Sunday school, and he's like, oh yeah, I saw Ben. I was like, oh yeah, Ben's soccer team. That's Ben's mom, right? It was just like those connections where I'm like, okay, I kind of know you, but I don't know why I know you. But then but you can't maintain the level of like really close relationship with everybody. That 1,500 anyway, and so it breaks it down, and so it's being really. I think it goes back to the choice thing, like the real specific intentionality of who are you going to have in that smaller circle, smaller and smaller circles. They're going to help influence, direct, and guide. And
Yeah.
I think in leadership, it's really easy to have people around you,
Hmm.
right? Because you're directing, you're leading, you're coaching, you're whatever.
Hmm.
It's way harder to have people actually know you. That makes sense. And I think that's why a lot of spiritual leaders, for example, like a lot of pastors, fall morally, is
Hmm.
because they're known and loved and adored by millions of people, but nobody actually really knows what's going on, inside of them.
What's going on? Yeah.
And so the connection piece is when you're actually like really known and you're really seen by somebody, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. First of all, it's scary as hell, right? Just put yourself out there and be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is me. This is all this stuff. I think we've alluded to it on other podcasts, but when we when we drove to Calgary together. I mean, driving up to Calgary was just fun. We were having a good time. In Calgary at the leadership conference, there was a lot of like really good, really challenging things that were spoken. And then that Sunday afternoon after church, and we both just had this like crazy experience together. We're like, what in the world is going on? And it was just a a knowing. I don't know another way to say it, right? And then the drive back was where I was so messed up in myself, like in terms of like shame and guilt and different things, not doing well in my family, not doing well in life, and I felt like I just like bore my soul for like 5 hours, or however long that drive was, right? And uh, and then at the end of all of that, like realizing like, man, that connection that we have is one of those things that it's deep, right?
Yeah.
And that even though the over the years we haven't stayed in touch as much. I mean, doing this podcast has been fun because it's like, man, we're hanging out all the time now.
Right.
But every time we would hang out, it was like we could pick right up where we were, right?
Agreed.
Because actually a connection there. And I think it goes back to the thing that you were saying, like with kids and connection is, TIME is how they spell love, but it's not necessarily like the quantity of time. There's a lot of people that I'm around a lot more than I am with you,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
But we don't have the same relationship that you and I have,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think there's my thoughts on connection.
That's great, man. That's a yeah. I truly value like our connection as friends and truly like you're like my bro, dude. Like I can like it like very much in a sense where like I can also come up to you and like there's when I'm struggling with stuff, I can be like, man, I need some perspective and I need a dose of reality and I need some accountability. Like I can pick up the phone, give you a call and be like, hey man, like, dude, I need some help. Right.
Yeah.
So and I know hopefully you feel the same as you know my way. I know you do. So um this connection thing I was uh so my son's birthday is today and he's turning 17, man. 17-year-old.
Cool.
It's crazy, dude.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right, one more year and um he's an adult. uh but so my present to him was my 2009 Dodge Ram. I was gonna give it to him, right? Just here you
Nice. Yeah.
go. But also I'm gonna give it to you like a little bit spruced up, right? And so I bought him like a for his birthday. I gave him or I bought uh, a what do you call it, a subwoofer and an
Okay.
amp and like a new an updated like CD or not. Wow, that doesn't even sound updated when I say CD. Uh, CarPlay
Yeah.
deck
Yeah. Yeah.
thing for your and so never installed one of those before, and uh, and I just like hung out with my son. Like we just hung out. There's times where we didn't say much, but we were just together, right? And
Yeah.
there was just that connection. And I remember we couldn't figure out we couldn't figure out how like the amp wouldn't turn on. Like I was kind of like we sat there for like a half hour. We were like unplugging things, plugging things where they needed to go. Um, and then uh, all of a sudden, like my son uh, like plugged it into one of these things, and the connection happened. And all of a sudden, we felt the bass of the song, and like we looked at it, we were like looking at the plug, and when it connected, we looked at each other, and we connected. We were like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, buddy," yeah. And then we like gave each other like fist bumps, and man, it was such a good moment, and um, like and it was kind of like a good metaphor too, right? Like when like things weren't working, but when we connected the right things, like you start to feel the bass slap, right?
Yeah.
And and um and even in the like in the midst of like kind of our frustration and we were kind of feeling a little dejected about like man did we hook something up wrong, like
Yeah.
we couldn't troubleshoot it for like a half hour and then it happened And like, you know what I mean? And it all, like, all of the frustration and all that other stuff, like, we had to go through that to kind of feel this like new connection that we had, because we figured it out together, and when we can,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, so anyways, that was a fun deal for myself and my son to
That's
just do
super
that.
cool.
And I don't know, I've been really uh I don't know, my mood has been like better lately. I don't know if it's just my son, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm maturing more as a dad, and like my kids. I don't know, man. My kids just help me to be a better person. Really, like how I treat my kids is how I treat others. And when I'm like not doing well, man, when I'm not treating my kids well, boy, I don't want to be around anybody else. You know what I mean? And my wife. Like I rarely treat my wife bad. It usually like my kids. They're kind of like the lowest on the bottom on the totem pole when it comes to our household. But yeah, yeah, when I'm really in a funk, man, and I'm disconnected from my family, boy, I'm way off track. So
Yeah.
um you know, there's more choosing in this book, right? There's choosing freedom, choosing health and healing, choosing mindfulness, and choosing belief. Those are some of the things too. But I really wanted to hit on that choosing belief part, because what we believe. You said this too when you were talking about like how you how you view yourself, right? Like how you viewed yourself in those times. And I think belief um is essential for like just being successful in life, right? You have to
Yeah.
like you have to know that you're who you are and what you're all about, right? And so when you get caught uh in the like I'm am I better, am I do I feel like I'm better than what I am? And the part where, oh, no, 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 I'm full of doubt. Like that sounds super anxious. Like, you know what I mean? I could be real anxious when I'm caught up in the mix right there. So, um, let's dive into that real quick. Like when I say choosing belief, what comes to mind when I ask you that?
Yeah. Hmm. I mean, the first image that came to my mind was you ever watched Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so, and his whole thing about believe, and there's this scene where Coach Nate, I mean, it's one of those series that I don't necessarily recommend because it's got some terrible stuff in
It does.
it. But there's also some amazing stuff in there. I was like, man, if there,
Absolutely.
honestly, it feels like there's two different sets of writers, and if there was
Mm,
one set of writers that would have just like s- stuck true to the storyline, like,
yeah.
dude, it would be amazing. And then there's another set of writers that you're like, what? Like, what does that have to do with anything? This is stupid, you know? Obviously, it's Hollywood. But
Yeah.
other than that, but the concept, man, excuse me. God bless editing. We can take all that out. um, but the concept is amazing, right? The concept of Ted Lasso is awesome. I mean, yes, it's humorous because you got an American football coach that's going to go teach English soccer players, football players how to play. Hilarious. But the way that he leads, right, and the way that he is doing it is all about infusing belief,
Hmm.
infusing belief, infusing belief, infusing belief. And so one of the scenes was, I can't remember what season it was in, but basically Coach Nate, who's kind of one of the assistant coaches that he brings up from a towel boy, um, says something that's like, well, I don't know if we can do it, and inside Ted Lasso's house, and Ted runs upstairs and he grabs this sign that says "Believe," and he comes downstairs. He's like, "Does this ring a bell? Does this ring a very large bell, Nate?" Like it's about belief.
Right.
It's about making sure that you believe. And so the thing that is so that was the first picture, but the thing that always strikes me is that it's really easy to believe in the wrong thing.
Mm,
Put hope in things that you don't necessarily need to put hope in, or like believing this. So again, I don't remember who said it. Maybe John Maxwell, maybe Erwin McManus, or some other person that I respect very much. It's talking about belief isn't, if somebody says, "Hey, I believe that I'm going to be a center in the NBA." Like if I say that, I'm 6 foot, and my wife's 5 foot, so I look like a giant compared to her. But in the NBA, I ain't going to make it as a center, right? I can believe all I want, but that does not mean that it's kind of defying reality.
Hmm.
But when I think of like belief, like what are the beliefs that I have about specific things?
Hmm.
For example, I believe very strongly that people are capable of change. Like not necessarily like physical change, like I can be a center in the NBA, but I believe that nobody's hopeless.
Mm.
And it's probably because I've seen, like in myself, right, change and transformation. I've also seen change and transformation in so many other people. It's like, okay, well, I can't not believe that you're capable of change.
Right.
So if I think of like, anxiety and the less anxious life, I think comes back to like, well, the negative belief, if you will, like, well, this is as good as it's going to get. Says who? Me and my wife were just having this conversation. Somebody that she knows that she's close with was essentially saying that, like, well, I guess this is just as good as life is going to get. I was like, okay, well,
Mm.
you're in your mid 30s. There's a lot of life left,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
And if you really believe that in your mid 30s, this is as good as it's going to get, I guess that's where you're going to go. And one of my favorite quotes is from Henry Ford. He said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And
Right.
so what do you vote? Like, what is the belief? And so for me, it's reframing belief in what are the things that I believe to be true. Do I believe this is as good as it's going to get? No. Do I live a great life? Yeah, I do. But if I believe this is as good as it's going to get, then it means that I don't need to try anymore. It means I don't need to continually choose to get better, right?
Yeah.
It means that I don't put in that. And then I think that the last, like the bigger picture of belief, talking about being a Christian, um, that I do believe, and it's true, like even in 12 step, even being in, if you've ever been to a 12 step group, and people talk about step one and step two, and it's don't remember what the step it is, but basically it's you have this belief that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. Like
Mm.
that's the verbiage. And it's amazing, like being in 12 step groups with people that as they talk about what is their higher power. And for a lot of people, it is Jesus, right? For a lot of people, it is a spiritual belief. But there are some guys that their higher power, if you will, is just like the group or was whatever. Now, I don't think that that's accurate. I do believe that the higher power is Jesus, right? I do believe that everything that the Bible says and points to Jesus, and you read what Jesus said, and
Mhm.
you realize like, okay, if this was some crazy cult, it would have died out a long time ago, right? Either Jesus said what he said, and it's either true or it's not. And so for me, it was, going back to the choice thing, like realizing, like, okay, if what he said was true, then it's a very compelling argument for me to believe,
Mm.
right? And to
Right.
put faith and trust in everything that happens in that. And so again, I think what goes me back to the idea of belief and the choice. It's like, okay, there's a lot of freedom and a lot of power in realizing like there's a God and I'm not him.
That's it.
It's actually something my pastor said, and I've heard it before, but he said it yesterday in his sermon. Essentially that like, man, there's a lot of freedom when you're like, hey, there's a God. I'm not him.
Right.
So if I can cling to that, or like that's why I was starting with 12 step. It's like, okay, a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. It's like, oh, I don't have to be it. Like I don't have to do that. And it was really funny. It was a pretty humbling moment. So it was a few weeks ago. So I do quarterly stuff for businesses and things, right? And we're setting course and strategy for where we want to go. A
Mhm.
friend of mine in Great Falls, actually, Kendra, wonderful, wonderful woman. She has a really cool company up there, a series of companies. And the thing that she always said, she's like, you know what? She's like, I just asked Jesus for strategy, and then I listened. Like, and she's pretty smart, savvy businesswoman, right?
Yeah.
Um, And so it was funny. So I was going to do it. I do it for myself for Lead Academy, yeah, every quarter. Spend a day and just like, okay, what are we doing? How are we pushing forward? And my mom had sent me this video. I'd never heard of the guy before, and his whole thing was that he said, I've got supernatural strategy that I tap into.
Mm.
And so people look like, well, where does this strategy come from? It's like, honestly, I pray and I listen. I'm like, okay, and I just go with it. And so it
Mm.
was funny. So she sent me that the morning I'm going to do this, my own work on like quarterly strategy and stuff like that. And it was just funny because I was like, that's so embarrassing because I didn't think of that. That was not the first thought that came to my mind because I do a lot of business strategy and there's a lot of things that people just need like, yeah, you should probably have a CRM. You should probably have some framework for building out how you talk to people. I mean, right, that's really basic stuff, and that's the stuff I help companies with all the time. But for me, it was like this download, if you will, of like, oh, I should stop trying to do it all on my own and just pray for strategy.
Mm.
And so one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast was from that session where I was like, okay, I just need to like shut up for a minute and like, okay, Jesus, like what do we need to do? And I had a list of 15 things that I was thinking about. So I basically wrote those 15 things down and then just shut up. Listen, it was like, okay. And I wrote those things down. Like, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. I need to put that on the table. I need to not do that. Right. And it was really cool and eye opening because it literally like that 4 hours or whatever it was, the coffee shop. I honestly feel like I have strategy for the next year and a half of like, okay, these are the things I need to do. And here's kind of the timeline that things need to happen in. And it's amazing to see the things that have happened even just since that time. It's been like a month, right? I mean, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. Um, so I don't know. I think that's for me when you say belief, like that's a big one. It's like
Nice.
meaning that I don't have to have it all myself and being able to just set that down.
Yeah.
There you go. Here's my last
That's
riff.
good. That's good, man. Yeah, like I think um you know I think about my own belief too. And a belief that both you and I share in Christ. Like uh my yeah, again, I go back to my children, and we've actually been having like Proverbs of the Day talks. So we actually just sit at the table and we just read the proverb of the day. And and one of my favorite uh, I can't remember which proverb it is, but it's a proverb where it says that um, it is it is God's privilege um, to like hide treasure, and it's for kings to discover them. And I felt like that's what we were doing when we were like really trying to discover what God has for us, right? What kind of grace, what kind of wisdom He's got for us for the day, um and I like reflect back and just go, what, like just the blessings that I get from hearing my kids' perspective on things, and then like same thing as you. It helps me to like when my kids start asking me questions about things. I'm like, that's a great question, son. I have no idea. And I got to the point one time where we kind of kept kind of circling through those things that none of us at the table kind of had, and like maybe we didn't even have a maybe like a hint of what it was asking and what it was talking about. So I kind of like looked at both of my kids and say, "Hey, man, there's just some things that are just eternal, and infinite, that our finite minds we just won't understand,
Yeah.
and that's okay. That's okay." Because what it did for us is that it almost like get like it postured us to be humble of how amazing God is. Like we can't even fathom, you know what I mean? And we all just sat there and just like soaked that moment in. And like it's like little things like that where like my belief, it goes off from me, uh which can make it hard. Like I'll be honest, man, because I have a lot of flaws. I have a lot of things that I got to work on, and sometimes I doubt a lot. Right? I'm very I can be very that ship that's tossed to and fro, right, in the sea. I actually I would say that that happens a lot, right? Because the simple fact that I lead my family, you know what I mean? There's a there's a lot of that going on, and that and the decisions that I make don't just impact me; they impact my family too, right? And then like to now to go to take that in a professional sense, right? What starts at home gets taken to the professional, right? At when I'm a school counselor, right? Like I have to make decisions, and I have to the counsel that I make. Uh, it, it can be, sometimes it can be life and death. Sometimes I feel that way, right? Because um, you know there's kids in there that feel they're in that despair and dire situation that they feel that they're in, right? So helping them get out of that. So I'm saying all this um, because, like, I think like choosing to believe in something other than something greater than ourselves is probably a pinnacle thing for me, because
Yeah.
if I choose God, right, everything else, like the word says, seek first the kingdom and everything else will be added to you. Like I think going off the story that this lady told you, right? Like I just pray about it. That's seeking the kingdom first to me,
Yeah.
right? And so um I it just there's a lot of uh there's a lot of changing of um just my countenance and my posture when I choose faith over anxiety, over doubt, over all those things, which is always present. It's
Yeah.
always present. Um, but I also have to believe and remember that my God is always present too, right? And that's what you're saying about tapping into that supernatural power, right? That's there, supernatural tank that's there, and God to me, like he's here, take it. Like I want you to take. Well, like why? That's all you want? I got more for you. If you want it, it's there. Just ask. I was like, yes. Why? And why do I do that? Because I think I can do better sometimes, which I can't. And I think that stems from like, instead of choosing belief, I choose to be in control, right? I'm not, and when I choose to be in control all the time, like I don't know. I don't know. Help me flesh that. I don't know if you know where I'm kind of like getting with, because there's sometimes where uh I maybe I'm not sober in my measure of myself, and I can feel this, like, this really big high and like this confidence almost spilling over to maybe pride and stuff, that I get right. I get caught up. The next thing I know, right? Like I'm 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 walking on water. Next thing I know, I'm like drowning. I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Right? So no, I'm throwing out some thoughts out there, man. I I I like I like the book, the choosing a non-anxious life, but and all of these things that he's talking about choosing, they're rooted in principles.
Yeah.
Um, but I go to the last one. It sticks out to me the most for me because I was up last night, and we were talking about this right before we started. Um, and I just felt this sense of anxiety for my son is injured, right? He's going into his junior year, and he's got an ankle injury right now that, like, his summer, he basically was sidelined the whole summer. So like working out, like doing the things that he's good at. and I see some positives that come from that, right? Like he's able to like
Yeah.
reflect. He's actually able to be like, oh man, like I'm not invincible, right?
Right.
So, and I think it's really gotten him closer to, seeking his own belief, right, and his own conviction in Christ and what Christ is doing in his life. But for me, last night when I woke up, right, again, we're talking about choice. I could have made a choice to just like do some doom scrolling and like maybe something funny will get me out of this, like, and like I'll
Yeah.
get tired eventually, which I did the last 2 nights. This night was different because I chose belief, right? And um I and I landed on, um actually the verse that was on there is being led by the Spirit. That was the Holy Spirit prompting in my mind. And so I had to look it up because I didn't I you know I read the Bible, but I don't know where some verses are. Like when I like, so I, what's great about technology, like boom, Bible app, da, 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 bam, there it
Yeah.
is. And it led me to Galatians 5, and it talks about the two things, right? It talks about living in our flesh, and then living in our and then living in the Spirit.
Yeah.
And here's what here's what I propose, um, and to live a non-anxious life is to choose to live in the Spirit, right? And what does that mean specifically? I'm going to choose love. I'm going to choose joy, right? I'm going to choose hope. I'm going to choose gentleness, kindness, faithfulness, patience, self-control, like all of those things. Cause nothing can go against that, right?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's no law against it.
Right.
So, that would be my proposal for living a non-anxious life, is to live those out,
Nice.
right? I probably missed one. Goodness, choosing goodness.
They're all in there.
They're
That's
all
all
in
good.
there.
So I'm curious because, like, how then does this translate, like, in your professional life?
Mm,
Meaning, like, when you're, dealing with kids and stuff like that. Like, because kind of the thing we were talking about, I think on a previous podcast of like being able to teach the principle, right? And just be like, and how do you work that in with kids? Because I'm sure you see a lot of kids that are anxious. Any study that I've seen shows that anxiety is kind of at an all-time high
yeah.
for kids in school and stuff like that. And I think there's different factors for that, social media, weirdness of society, different stuff we talked about. But all that aside, how do you bring that calm, that non-anxious, you know what I mean? Like how do you set the temperature and guide kids that are stuck, like they're just overwhelmed with anxiety?
Yeah, so that's a good question, man. Like I I know that, when it comes to school, there's always been it's tough, especially, no, I wouldn't say tough. It's a challenge, right? If you're a person who believes in Christ, and you know what the antidote is, but you're in an environment where, um it's not very supportive of the antidote. It's like, we just had COVID a little bit ago. Like everybody, like people are like, ivermectin works and this, right? And then the mob goes, no, it doesn't. Shut your mouth. And you know what? Like that can happen when you're in the school. And it, for me, it's choosing my convictions over the noise, right? Over over potentially what could happen. And for me, when I've built, right, I go back to connection. I've built relationships with kids to where, like, you can I have this prompting in my heart when we're having conversations, when kids go, oh, what church do you go to? Oh, that's interesting. Is it good? Like, I'll have those little bookmarks, and
Yeah.
then, and then possibly, either at the end, when we hit a sticking point, when you say when kids are super anxious and they don't know what to do, there's a lot of times, I'll be honest, man, I don't know what to do either, right? And
Right.
I think when I communicate things like that to kids, it um our connection deepens, right?
Mhm.
The bass slaps at that moment,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm attuning with them. I'm sitting in your shoes and I don't know what to do. And it's in those moments where it's the it's the it's the it's the it's God knocking, and I'm gonna answer it. And it's that time when I go, when I don't know the answers, and I don't know a lot of answers to a lot of things, kiddo, but I do know what helps me to gain some clarity and to have a little bit of peace in what I do, and that's to pray. And it's amazing how kids are like, yeah, let's do it. And so, right, it's all those. How do you teach that? I don't know how to teach that right there. It's all wrapped into the
Yeah.
experience that you're having, and to have the conviction to do it in the moment, and
Yeah.
to do the right thing, because it's the right thing to do at the moment, right? So, and I don't, to me personally, I don't think it's ever wrong to pray. Like, man, you're connecting. You're like you said, right? You're tapping into a supernatural, like, uh resource, right?
Yeah.
You're tapping the you know you're tapping into the being that did everything,
Right.
that knows that you're going to ask this anyways, but it's just, right, like we're dads, right? We're dads, like we know our kids tendencies and what they're going to do. We can predict it.
Yeah.
How awesome does it feel when you know what they're going to do, but before they do the thing, they come to you and they go, I need help with this.
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, but this is much better.
Right. Right.
uh
Right.
I
That's good.
and like, I think our heavenly Father gives us as dads those little bits of slices of, this is how I feel about you. This I'm giving you just a small smidge of what I feel about you.
Yeah.
I went all in. Just so you remember, I went all in. I gave you my boy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like it's one of those things where, man, I get supercharged and empowered when we get to that point, and we can share belief, and we can share um the best antidote, the best answer for any situation, and that's to pray, and to ask somebody, and to ask God, who's higher and more elevated than us, than hey, give us some answers, and like in the process, just give us some peace. And it's amazing how kids go back to school. They um they have a little bit more perseverance. They get to experience a little bit of that I can do it, right. um and I don't know, I'm saying a lot of stuff right there, but yeah.
Oh man, it was good. Uh, yeah. Yeah. I think it was just bringing it full circle because just what you were saying about like the conviction piece, right? That you're just like, no, the conviction is that we're going to pray and that is going to change something because I don't have the answer. But it goes back to even the thing like, I think I got to figure out how to definitely clip that section where you were talking about like, my belief is that living a non-anxious life is living by the Spirit,
Mm.
these things, right? And then so my question to you was okay, well, how do you do this in practice? And you're like, that's exactly what I do. Like, I don't have the answer. And so I'm like, okay, Holy Spirit, we need to know what's going on. And if nothing else, peace that surpasses understanding, right? Give us some reflection, some insight. Yeah. Anyway, dude, that was great. I think we should probably end it there. That was fantastic.